You're fired. WWE in chaos. ASUKA on her knees begging Triple H for mercy after clash with Rhea Ripley. This is absolutely heartbreaking and infuriating at the same time. The Empress of Tomorrow, one of WWE's most decorated and beloved superstars, was just fired by Triple H after a controversial confrontation with Rhea Ripley, and what happened next will make you sick to your stomach. ASUKA, a woman who has carried the women's division for years, who has main event pay-per-views, who has earned every accolade she's received, was literally on her knees in Triple H's office begging for her job back. If you're not absolutely furious about the disrespect, the humiliation, and the way WWE just threw away a legend like yesterday's trash, then you need to watch this whole video because what I'm about to expose is corporate cruelty at its absolute worst. Comment right now if you think Triple H has lost his mind firing ASUKA, because what went down backstage is already causing a revolt in the women's locker room and threatening to tear the entire division apart. This isn't just about one firing, this is about respect, about loyalty, and about whether WWE values international stars who don't fit their homegrown mold. The image of ASUKA on her knees, tears streaming down her face, begging for mercy, is going to haunt wrestling fans for years. Let me break down exactly what happened because the full story makes this situation even more devastating and controversial. It started during a segment on SmackDown where Rhea Ripley was cutting a promo about being the most dominant woman in WWE history. Standard Rhea stuff, aggressive, confident, declaring herself untouchable. But then she made a critical mistake that set everything in motion. Rhea said, and I quote, "Every woman who came before me was just keeping the spot warm until the real dominant force arrived. All those Japanese wrestlers, all those indie darlings, all those NXT call UPS, they were just placeholders until Rhea Ripley showed everyone what a true women's champion looks like." The disrespect in those words is staggering. Rhea basically dismissed the entire history of women's wrestling, and more specifically, she dismissed the contributions of international stars like ASUKA, who revolutionized women's wrestling in WWE. For someone like ASUKA, who came from Japan with a legendary reputation, who had an undefeated streak that seemed impossible to break, who won championships and headline shows, to hear that she was just a placeholder must have felt like a slap across the face. Here's a trivia question for the real fans: how long was ASUKA's undefeated streak in NXT and on the main roster combined? Drop your answer below. ASUKA was backstage watching this promo on a monitor, and multiple witnesses report that you could see her expression change from neutral to furious in real time. Her fists clenched. Her jaw tightened. And then she did something that she's never done in her entire WWE career. She walked out of that ring without permission from creative, without it being in the script, and without any plan except to defend her legacy and her pride. When ASUKA's music hit and she walked out onto that stage, you could feel the electricity in the arena. The crowd went insane because they knew they were about to witness something special, something unscripted, something real. ASUKA marched down to that ring with a purpose, slid under the ropes, and got right in Rhea Ripley's face. The confrontation was intense. ASUKA was speaking rapid-fire Japanese mixed with English, clearly emotional and angry in a way we rarely see from her. Rhea, to her credit, didn't back down, and that's when things escalated from a verbal confrontation to a physical altercation. ASUKA shoved Rhea. Rhea shoved back. And then all hell broke loose. What followed was not a worked wrestling segment. This was two women legitimately fighting, throwing real strikes, grappling with genuine intensity. Security rushed the ring, but even they struggled to separate these two absolute warriors. The segment went way longer than it should have because nobody could control ASUKA and Rhea once they started trading blows. When they finally got separated and taken backstage, that's when Triple H got involved, and his reaction was swift and brutal. According to multiple sources, Triple H called ASUKA into his office immediately and told her that going off script, attacking another performer without authorization, and creating a dangerous situation was absolutely unacceptable. And then he said the words that changed everything: "You're fired." Drop a comment and tell me, did Triple H overreact by firing ASUKA, or was this an appropriate response to going off script and creating chaos? This is the debate that's exploding right now. ASUKA's reaction to being fired is what makes this story absolutely heartbreaking. According to people who were outside Triple H's office, they could hear her crying, genuinely sobbing, something nobody has ever witnessed from the usually stoic Empress of Tomorrow. And then came the moment that nobody can stop talking about. ASUKA dropped to her knees in Triple H's office and begged for her job. Imagine that scene for a moment. ASUKA, a woman who has fought her entire life to get where she is, who left her home country to pursue her wrestling dreams in WWE, who overcame language barriers and cultural differences to become one of the most successful women in company history, reduced to begging on her knees for mercy from a corporate executive who decided her passion and her pride were liabilities rather than assets. Witnesses say ASUKA was saying things like, "Please, I need this job. Wrestling is my life. WWE is my family. I made a mistake. Please give me another chance." The desperation in her voice, the genuine fear of losing everything she's worked for, the humiliation of having to beg, it's crushing to even think about, let alone witness. Triple H's response, according to reports, was cold and corporate. You put this company at risk. You put Rhea at risk. You showed that you can't be trusted to follow the script and work within the system. I can't have that kind of unpredictability on my roster. The decision is final. The image of ASUKA on her knees, crying and begging, while Triple H remained unmoved and corporate is going to be legendary for all the wrong reasons. This is the kind of moment that defines careers, that changes perceptions, that makes fans question everything about how WWE operates behind the scenes. The women's locker room reaction has been explosive. Multiple female superstars have reportedly confronted Triple H about this decision, saying that firing ASUKA for defending her legacy is wrong and sets a terrible precedent. They're arguing that if ASUKA can be fired for having passion and standing up for herself, then any of them could be next. Quick question, who do you think was in the right in the original confrontation, ASUKA for defending her legacy, or Rhea for speaking her mind even if it was disrespectful? Sound off below. Charlotte Flair reportedly went nuclear when she heard about ASUKA being fired, telling management that ASUKA has done more for the women's division than most people in the company and that losing her is catastrophic. Bianca Belair echoed similar sentiments, pointing out that ASUKA is one of the most overperformers regardless of language barriers and that her connection with the audience is irreplaceable. Even Becky Lynch, who has had feuds with ASUKA over the years, came to her defense, saying that passion should be celebrated, not punished, and that WWE is making a huge mistake by letting ASUKA go over what amounts to a crime of passion, defending her honor and her legacy against disrespect. But the most powerful reaction came from Rhea Ripley herself. In a shocking twist, Rhea went to Triple H and told him that she didn't want ASUKA fired over their confrontation. Rhea apparently said that what happened was between two competitors who both had valid perspectives, that it got heated but nobody was seriously hurt, and that firing ASUKA was an overreaction that makes everyone look bad. For Rhea, the person who was supposedly attacked and who could use this situation to eliminate a top competitor, to defend ASUKA and advocate for her return says everything about the respect these women have for each other despite their conflicts. It also makes Triple H's decision look even worse because even the victim in this situation thinks the punishment doesn't fit the crime. The fan reaction has been overwhelming. The hashtag Bring Back ASUKA has been trending worldwide for days. Petitions demanding her reinstatement have gathered hundreds of thousands of signatures. Fan art depicting ASUKA as a tragic hero who was wrongly punished for having pride has flooded social media. The WWE Universe is making it crystal clear that they do not support this decision. But there's also a darker element to the fan discussion that needs to be addressed: accusations that WWE has a pattern of treating international talent, particularly Japanese performers, as disposable. Critics point to how Shinsuke Nakamura was booked after his initial main roster push, how Kenta Hideo Itami was handled, how Kairi Sane ultimately left, and now how ASUKA is being treated. The pattern suggests systemic issues with how WWE values and respects talent from certain regions. Give me your honest take. Do you think WWE has a problem with how they treat Japanese wrestlers specifically, or is this just an unfortunate individual situation? Let me know in the comments. The business implications of firing ASUKA are staggering. ASUKA is one of the top merchandise sellers in the women's division. Her masks alone generate significant revenue. She has a massive international fan base, particularly in Japan where WWE is actively trying to grow their market presence. Firing her damages WWE's relationship with Japanese fans and potentially hurts their expansion efforts in a crucial market. From a creative standpoint, ASUKA's removal creates huge holes in storylines. She was scheduled for championship programs. She was positioned as a top contender. Her unique character and in-ring style provided variety that the women's division desperately needs. Losing her makes the entire division less interesting and less diverse in terms of presentation. The legal implications are also fascinating. ASUKA's contract presumably has provisions about termination and what constitutes grounds for firing. Going off script is certainly problematic, but is it enough to justify immediate termination without warnings or fines or suspensions? ASUKA could potentially have grounds for a wrongful termination lawsuit if her contract was violated or if she can prove she was treated differently than other performers who have gone off script. Behind closed doors, there are reports that WWE management is divided on whether this was the right decision. Some executives support Triple H's hardline stance, viewing it as necessary to maintain order and discipline. Others think he overreacted and cost WWE a major star over something that could have been handled with a fine and a stern warning. There's also speculation that Triple H is under pressure from corporate to run a tighter ship, to eliminate unpredictability, and to ensure that WWE programming is controlled and safe for advertisers and sponsors. In that context, ASUKA's actions, however justified from a performer's perspective, represented exactly the kind of chaos that corporate WWE wants to eliminate. But here's the fundamental problem: wrestling is supposed to be unpredictable. It's supposed to have moments that feel real and dangerous and unscripted. When you eliminate all spontaneity in the name of control and safety, you risk creating a sterile product that doesn't connect with audiences on an emotional level. ASUKA's confrontation with Rhea was compelling because it felt real. because it had genuine emotion behind it. What's your take? Should WWE prioritize control and predictability, or should they allow more spontaneity and risk even if it occasionally creates chaos? Drop your opinion. The cultural context is crucial to understanding why this situation is so problematic. In Japanese wrestling culture, defending your honor and your legacy is not just accepted, it's expected. The concept of fighting spirit and never backing down from disrespect is fundamental to how Japanese wrestlers are trained and how they view their profession. ASUKA was operating from that cultural framework when she confronted Rhea. For WWE to punish her for behavior that would be celebrated in her home country's wrestling culture suggests a fundamental disconnect between how WWE views wrestling and how much of the global wrestling community views it. This isn't just about one incident, it's about whether WWE can truly be a global company while enforcing a very American, very corporate approach to how their performers are allowed to behave. The image of ASUKA on her knees begging has become symbolic of larger issues in WWE. It represents international talent being forced to beg for opportunities. It represents performers being stripped of dignity by corporate structures. It represents the power imbalance between management and talent. Even people who think ASUKA deserves some form of punishment are uncomfortable with the visual of her being reduced to begging for mercy. Social media has been flooded with photoshopped images, fan art, and video packages memorializing ASUKA's WWE career as if she's never coming back. Tribute videos highlighting her greatest matches, her title wins, her iconic moments have gotten millions of views. The outpouring of love and support from fans worldwide demonstrates just how valued ASUKA was and how devastating her loss is to the WWE universe. Japanese wrestling media has covered this story extensively, and the reaction in Japan has been one of outrage. ASUKA is a national treasure in Japanese wrestling circles, and seeing her humiliated and fired by WWE has created significant backlash against the company. This could have long-term implications for WWE's business relationships in Japan and their ability to recruit top Japanese talent in the future. Other wrestling promotions are reportedly salivating at the possibility of signing ASUKA if she's truly done with WWE. AEW, NJPW, Stardom, all of them would love to bring in someone of ASUKA's caliber and star power. If WWE doesn't fix this situation quickly, they might lose ASUKA to a competitor where she could immediately become a top star and potentially be used to criticize WWE's treatment of her. Here's a spicy question: if ASUKA goes to AEW or another promotion, will she be more successful there than she was in WWE, or has WWE already provided her peak moments? Let me know what you think. The generational divide in how people view this situation is interesting. Older fans who remember wrestling's more wild and unpredictable days tend to side with ASUKA, viewing her actions as understandable and her firing as excessive corporate overreach. Younger fans who've grown up with more controlled, scripted WWE programming are more divided, with some viewing ASUKA's actions as unprofessional regardless of her motivations. The discussion about gender is also crucial. Would a male superstar be fired for the same actions? We've seen men go off script, we've seen men get into legitimate backstage altercations, we've seen men create chaos, and typically the consequences are suspensions, fines, or storyline punishments, not immediate termination. The perception that ASUKA is being held to a stricter standard because she's a woman is strong and difficult to dismiss. Triple H's reputation is taking significant damage from this decision. He's built his tenure as WWE's creative leader on being more wrestler-friendly, more understanding of what performers want, more willing to listen and collaborate. But this situation makes him look cold, corporate, and willing to sacrifice talent to maintain control. The goodwill he'd built up is eroding rapidly. There are reports that some wrestlers are considering their options, wondering if WWE under Triple H is really as different from WWE under Vince McMahon as they'd hoped. If top performers start questioning whether they want to continue with WWE because they see how ASUKA was treated, that could create a talent exodus that damages the company for years to come. The timing of this situation is terrible for WWE. They're heading into a crucial period with major shows and international events coming up. Having one of their biggest international stars fired and the entire situation generating negative press is not what they need right now. The distraction alone could hurt creative, hurt morale, and hurt business. What should Triple H do now? Does he double down on the decision and risk further backlash, or does he find a way to rehire ASUKA and save face? Give me your advice in the comments. The possibilities for resolution are limited and all of them have problems. If Triple H reverses the decision and rehires ASUKA, he looks weak and like he can be pressured into changing his mind. If he stands firm, he loses a major star and creates ongoing resentment. If he offers some middle ground, like a suspension followed by reinstatement, it might satisfy nobody and just prolong the controversy. There's also the question of what ASUKA wants at this point. After being humiliated and forced to beg, would she even want to come back to WWE? Has the damage to her pride and dignity been so severe that she'd rather leave and rebuild elsewhere? These are questions that add complexity to an already complicated situation. The locker room morale is reportedly at an all-time low. Performers are scared to show too much passion or emotion because they've seen what can happen. They're questioning whether defending themselves or their legacies is worth the risk of being fired. The chilling effect on creativity and spontaneity could hurt the product significantly. One more trivia question: how many championships has ASUKA won in her WWE career across all brands? Test your knowledge below. The sponsor and corporate partner reaction is something WWE has to consider. Do companies want to be associated with images of a beloved performer on her knees begging for mercy? Does that fit the family-friendly entertainment brand that WWE tries to project? The optics are terrible from a corporate perspective, regardless of the justification. The precedent being set here is dangerous. If defending your legacy against disrespect results in immediate termination, what message does that send to every performer on the roster? Be quiet, accept disrespect, don't make waves, don't show too much passion, because if you do, you could lose everything. That's a recipe for bland, soulless programming where nobody feels anything because feeling things is too risky. The international fanbase is furious. ASUKA represents hope and possibility for fans around the world who see themselves in her, people who aren't American, who speak English as a second language, who had to overcome cultural barriers to succeed. Seeing her treated this way sends the message that no matter how successful you are, you're still disposable if you're not part of the preferred demographic. The historical context matters too. WWE has a complicated history with how they've treated international stars. Some have been given opportunities to thrive. Others have been stereotyped, marginalized, or ultimately discarded. ASUKA's firing adds to a pattern that's difficult to ignore and increasingly difficult to defend. Now it's your turn to weigh in on everything we just discussed. I want to hear from the wrestling newsletter family about all of this. Tell me in the comments. Was Triple H right to fire ASUKA, or did he go too far? Should ASUKA have confronted Rhea, or should she have stayed quiet? Do you think ASUKA will be rehired, or is she gone forever? Would you rather see ASUKA return to WWE or go somewhere else? What would you do if you were in Triple H's position right now? Smash that like button if you want ASUKA brought back immediately. Destroy that like button if you support Triple H's decision. Either way, engage with this video because this story is massive and everyone needs to be talking about it. Subscribe to Wrestling Newsletter if you haven't already because we'll be covering every development in this situation. Whether ASUKA gets rehired, goes elsewhere, or retires completely, we'll have all the coverage. Share this video with every wrestling fan you know because the image of ASUKA on her knees begging Triple H for mercy is something the wrestling world will never forget. This is a defining moment in WWE history, for better or worse. ASUKA has been fired. She begged for her job on her knees. Triple H was unmoved. The women's division is in chaos. And the entire wrestling world is divided on whether justice was served or whether we just witnessed corporate cruelty at its worst. This story is far from over, and the consequences will echo through WWE for months or even years to come. The Empress of Tomorrow's future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: wrestling fans will never forget what happened when pride and passion collided with corporate control.